This is Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily with Andrew Hustler Paterson and Michael Remus.
Welcome to another edition of Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Hassan with you. Not riding solo today, but Remus is away for the week. Our pal Connor Hrabchak is going to jump in right away, and interested to talk to Connor, see how his big night in Grand Forks was last night, along with seemingly half of the city going down to the Ehlers Center to see this big Zach Bryan show. But I definitely want to get Connor's thoughts on the Bombers heading into Rider Week and the Labor Day Classic. We're also going to touch in with our pal Jamie Thomas, the Winnipeg Jets. He just had a great chat with the head coach of the Moose Jaw Warriors, so we'll dig into JT and get a little bit more information on Braden Yager, who, of course, was the toast of the town last week, getting traded to Winnipeg in exchange for Rutger McGroarty. So that's coming up on the program. We'll also have Mike McIntyre. We'll talk a little Jets, a little Bombers, get Mike's thoughts on the upcoming Labor Day Classic. And later on, we'll also have Chris Meaney from FTN Bets, one of my favorite guys to talk to around this time of year, to get Meaney's pulse on the upcoming NFL season, some of his likes, dislikes, buys, sells, bets, and fades, all of that coming up a little later on. And we're also going to welcome in for a few minutes Harry Black from the PanAm Boxing Club. Of course, I mentioned yesterday on the show, our friends at the Beer Can, along with PanAm Boxing, are putting on a live boxing event on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m. What a great way to kick off the Sunday, the Labor Day Classic. Head on down to the Beer Can, have a few 1919s or generics or your favorite local beers, watch some great boxing in support of a couple great causes, and then roll out to watch the Bombers. So we'll have some more details on that a little bit later on when Harry Black joins us. But it is going to be a packed show. We will get to our Assiniboia Downs picks later on. Connor and I will also hit the cool bet lines a little bit later on today on the program. But just before we bring in Connor, tomorrow we'll have a new episode of CFL 110 with myself and Jeff Hamilton. Keep your eyes out for that. We'll have that premiere right after Winnipeg Sports Talk tomorrow. That, of course, is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. Also want to thank Coolbet Canada, Princess Auto, Canadian Club, Wallace & Wallace and F Apparel, Little Brown Jug, Manitoba Battery, Rollies Transfer, Consolidated Supply, the Beer Can, along with Next Door, and, of course, Hoagie Boys on South Osborne, Royal Sports, Boston Pizza, Breezy Bend, Assiniboia Downs, Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, and the Winnipeg Gold Eyes. And we will get to a why not question of the day for our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray. All right, Connor is back in the peg, and he's back on WST. What's good, buddy? How was the big concert last night in GF?
It was awesome, and I saw people on Twitter saying like they've never seen Grand Forks so busy, and I can't echo that statement enough. I've been down there many times in my life for hockey tournaments as a kid. Never gone down for a concert like this or of this magnitude, but man, oh man, the Chick-fil-A line was out the street onto the main street. It was unbelievably packed everywhere you went in Grand Forks. But the concert itself was so much fun. I'm pretty lucky that my voice still works today, but I'm fired up to be on the show for the whole week. And last night was so much fun.
God, you mentioned the Chick-fil-A. I should have got you to bring me back some. I do. And now that there's Chick-fil-A in Grand Forks, I will routinely do that and just bring an extra sack of that stuff. It is my personal favorite for decades. I know we've got the Krispy Kreme. We're apparently getting our long-awaited Arby's back. Let's get into the 21st century and get a Chick-fil-A here as well. But no, in all seriousness, what was the border like? because I saw some people going down, I guess, on Sunday, and it was as long of a line as I've seen in maybe in 20 years at the border. Did you like once you got there, how long did it take for you to get through?
So going down, and it's honestly our fault. Like, what do you think when you're going to Grand Forks for the day? Okay, we'll leave at 9, get to the border at like 10:30, get down to Grand Forks for 11:30. So we left at 9 and everyone's there at 10:30. So we waited, I think, an hour and 20 minutes going down, which was a long wait. And then going back, since I knew I had to be on the show today, I was like, I am not running that risk. So we woke up at 7:30 and we were at the border by, I think, like 8:39. And there was like 6 cars because, again, the night after the concert, no one's waking up at 7:30 to get to the border quickly, except for me, because, wanted to make sure I was home. So, but going down an hour 20 minutes, hour and a half. Yeah, it was the longest wait I've ever had at the border for sure.
Well, listen, it sounds like everyone had a good time. It was the biggest grossing event in Alerus Center history. And I know it was back-to-back sold-out shows. And I've been down there for some UND games before. I think we saw AC/DC there one time. We did a bus with a whole bunch of people down there when they were touring. But the Zach Bryan show certainly brought him out. I had a bunch of friends that went. Anyways, glad that you had a good time. You made it back in one piece. Your voice works, and you were ready to go. Listen, yesterday we kind of talked about this, and as we transition into Rider Week, the first of the home and home series, the highlight of the entire regular season in the Canadian Football League, and of course, the upcoming Labor Day Classic. What'd you think about Friday night? Pulled one out of the fire.
Goodness, yeah. So my Friday night went a little like, okay, sold out crowd, beautiful night, playing against Hamilton. I like the stakes weren't really high. So it took me a while to realize that it was a game, that it was like, we're getting into the fourth quarter and the Bombers are losing. Like, what's going on here? And then it was like a minute and a half left. And I'm realizing they have to score here if they want to win. Like, there's time in the CFL, but they got to that point where 19 seconds left, Kenny Lawler, they needed to score right then and there to win. So way more stressful than I thought it would be. Still a gorgeous night at Princess Auto Stadium. Sold out crowd. It was definitely a sellout because it was packed on the concourse, in the seats. It was full. And yeah, I mean, it was ugly offensively, and I'm sure we'll get into it because last week we said if they didn't, punch in these drives that go down to the red zone, there would be some questions. There are going to be some questions because they didn't. They did and got the one that counted, and they got the win heading into the Labor Day Banjo Bowl, but question marks still remain, at least on the offensive side of the ball for me.
Well, exactly. Listen, I had Westy on yesterday, and I mean, the conversation was very different if they don't succeed on that final drive. Very different, I think. And I think listen, you have to give Zach Collaros a ton of credit for being able to overcome a very, very subpar game by his standards and 3 picks and get the football back and march it down with the game on the line, with no more outs, with no more chances, and get that ball to Kenny Lawler and make it happen. And I think, honestly, and Hammer wrote about this in the paper yesterday in the Free Press, that was one of those gritty victories that I think you can maybe lean on later on in the season. Like, the Bombers will always be a team that has a lot of the intangibles, at least this group. They've won so much. They've accomplished so much together for the most part. Certainly guys like Zach Collaros. But my takeaway on the other side of things is, as great as it was to find a way to win, because that is, at the end of the day, what it's about, I think we can all agree that this offense has to be clicking at a whole nother level if they want to go in on Sunday and beat the Saskatchewan Roughriders, Connor.
Yeah, and we saw a few weeks ago what that Riders defense can do against the Bombers if they struggle. And that game was very similar, where the Bombers could move the ball a little bit, but that was the fumbles. It wasn't necessarily the stalling out in the red zone. It was the Nick Dembski fumble late in the game when he had green grass in front of him. But I do wonder, you talk about, this group being together a long time. The more I've thought about Friday's game, the more I wonder how big of an impact the Stanley Bryant thing had on the team. Like, we as fans were fired up Friday night, Princess Auto Stadium, sold out crowd, beautiful night. And then on like the fourth play of the game. Stanley Bryant, heat stroke, dehydration, whatever it ended up being, had to be taken to the hospital, was on the field for like 15, 20 minutes. People are like, what's going on? Everyone, at least around me in the stands, were refreshing Twitter, looking for an update. Like, I'm sure the players were heavily affected by that too. And, you know, Stanley Bryant, never mind his on the field presence and the O-line and how much time Zach had to throw, which was not a lot, and the 3 sacks and the 3 interceptions. Like, I think that played an impact, but also him being down on the field for 15 minutes and everyone being concerned and kind of the air being taken out of that crowd, at least at the start. I honestly think maybe halted the Bombers' momentum a little bit coming off that win against BC. I don't know if you agree, having been in the stadium that night.
Well, you know, first off, I mean, it was, a scary
For sure. Yeah.
long period of time. I mean, that's the longest injury delay I can remember. And just the way that it happened with him getting up and then walking a while and then taking one knee. And again, listen, this would be serious if it was any player. But I mean, this is Stanley Bryant, the rock of this football team. I mean, a foundational pillar of the Bombers' success over the last 5+ years. A guy that has not missed a start when they've needed him in 9 years. I mean, a couple times they've let him take a day off because they've clinched the West and, you know, they're getting ready for the playoffs. So it was a little bit jarring. And I mean, you know, as we've talked about it before, I mean, it sounds like this was the best case scenario. But I mean, I think everyone was thinking, like, could this be something heart related? You know, the way that it all went down. So I'm with you. I mean, I think there was, you know, a little bit of a lull, although that happened so early in the first half. And the rest of the first half, the Bombers were in complete control of that football game. I mean, it was 16-3 at halftime. What could have potentially played into it is getting a little bit more information at halftime that he was still there in the hospital, though apparently he called back to let them know that he was feeling better. But the Hamilton Tiger Cats got right back into the game. And, you know, I likened what the Bombers did at times to like the Matt Nichols era, in that, you know, they weren't a particularly explosive offense, but they ran the football very well. They moved it with short passes. But the thing is, if you're going to do that, if you're going to win games that way with good special teams, with good defense and very conservative offense, you cannot turn the football over. And that was what stuck out about the game with Collaros. It was the 3 interceptions that were really uncharacteristic of Zach. Now, we've said that throughout the year. I mean, he's right there at the top of the league now with Bo Levi Mitchell in the number of picks, which certainly is concerning. But again, on the bright side, you had a guy step up big time with the game on the line, go the length of the field, get it to Kenny Lawler, where he had been trying to get it a few times earlier in the game, not without success. And you hope that that will move on. The bottom line, though, Connor, is as much as it was certainly no Picasso, the Bombers get the win, and guess what? Ottawa beats BC. Saskatchewan loses again. Like, the way that the West has broken in the last month, the exact opposite of the first month of the season, where the Bombers lost every game, Saskatchewan and BC were winning. It's completely reversed, and we are essentially having a new starting point for the Western Division. And that old saying, the season really starts at Labor Day. Well, this year in the West, it's absolutely true. And if the Bombers win on Sunday, we're coming back from Regina on Monday talking about a first-place team.
Which is unbelievable. Like, again, you talk about how the West Division is broken over the past month or so, but last weekend, Saskatchewan loses, Winnipeg wins, Edmonton loses as well, and then BC loses, all 2 Eastern teams. So Winnipeg was the only team in the West to win. All the Eastern teams win, and now we're all tied at 5 wins. And Saskatchewan's only in first because they got that tie earlier on in the season. Otherwise, the Bombers and Riders would be tied for first. Riders currently a half game up because of that tie. But yeah, I mean, Labor Day and Banjo Bowl, how could you not, like, there's really no better script for these 2 games than first place in the West on the line. Whether both teams were at 7 wins or both teams are at 4 or 5, and this is what's happening. And the West is kind of just like faltering into it, or both teams are successful and it's still for first in the West. Having a Labor Day and Banjo Bowl home and home means something more than what it already is. And having first place in the West on the line is just going to add so much more to these games. And again, the 2 games against BC built so much anticipation from a Winnipeg perspective. But in Saskatchewan, what are they, 5-1 in their last 7? Like, they're sitting there going, okay, we can't keep sliding here. If this keeps up these next 2 weeks against the Bombers, they're really far behind then for looking in at first in the West. So a lot of intrigue with these 2 games. I'm so excited for this weekend.
Well, and I know that everyone on our trip, the 1930 crew, is locked and loaded for what should be just a phenomenal weekend. There is nothing like Labor Day weekend in Regina. And as I said, this game being, a full sellout, there'll be a lot of blue in the crowd playing for first place. It's been a long time since we've had these 2 teams so similarly matched up in record-wise, although you can throw the records out usually on Labor Day when the 2 teams played. Here's a quick note from Eddie Tate, because Bombers, originally this was going to be a day off. They returned to practice early, and I'm not sure what was the impetus to practice today. And by the way, Brady Oliveira, Gabe Wallace, and Tony Jones, part of the CFL's Week 12 honor roll this week. But the Bombers opened practice about an hour ago with no sign of Stanley Bryant. So we're going to, Mike O'Shea, I'm sure, will speak at some point, hopefully later today. We'll stay on top of that. And if we do have an update on Stanley Bryant's condition, potential of playing moving forward, I mean, first and foremost, we got to make sure that, whatever happened with Stanley hopefully was just a blip. It had been reported that he was very sick all week and went out, and then, it just hit him very, very early, obviously. But maybe there could be more to it. We'll wait to hear from the organization for clarity on that. But no Stanley Bryant, which means Kendall Randolph, who was moved out during the game to left tackle, was back at left tackle. Tui Eli playing at right guard. Gabe Wallace on crutches. Pat Neufeld not practicing, and no sign of Adam Bighill. There was some good news with Drew Wolotarski getting back, working with the offense, so he could make a return potentially, it looks like, for the Labor Day Classic. But let's face it, Connor, there are very few individuals on the entire Bomber roster that could be more impactful to lose for any game, but especially a game with a defense like Saskatchewan than Stanley Bryant. And if he is unable to play and Wallace is out as well, this is going to be a huge test for some of the depth of the Bomber offensive line. Because I'll tell you what, this line looks incredibly different the way we just laid it out than, for instance, when we saw this team go to Regina last year at this time.
Yeah, and if I'm not mistaken, the Bombers had 5 healthy offensive linemen for like the back half of the game last week against Hamilton, because Bryant goes
apparently
down early.
Jake Thomas was putting was changing numbers so he could go out. I'm not sure whether he actually did get out there, but at that point it does become a little bit of all hands on deck. But I mean, you can't get more thin than that.
No, and that's like when NFL teams have their emergency quarterback and it's just like one of the running backs. It's just like, okay, if all of our offensive linemen get hurt, then Jake Thomas, get out there. But yeah, 5 healthy offensive linemen because Bryant goes down. Wallace, it was an ugly injury. I don't know if they showed the replay on TV. I haven't looked at the replay on TV, but 5 healthy offensive linemen. Then you look at the 3 sacks that the Bombers gave up and the 3 interceptions. Zach kind of running for his life. A few of the interceptions where he's running and making throws on the run, and it's very erratic. So it's a very concerning part of the Bombers offense, and it has been a concern all year long. But the games against BC, they were turning a corner. Brady Oliveira was turning a corner. They could at least run the ball. Zach wasn't turning the ball over like you said he needs to do. But if they're that thin at O-line and Stanley Bryant is unable to go, that'll be probably the number one thing I'll be watching for in the Labor Day Classic in terms of a on-field X's and O's perspective. How much are the Riders blitzing at this thin offensive line? Are they only sending 3 because they think they can still get pressure with that? That's going to be really interesting to watch this Sunday if Stanley Bryant is unable to go. And even if he is able to go, seeing how well he's able to move, how well he's playing along with the rest of the offensive line.
We saw that in the second half. And, listen, credit to Chris Jones. I mean, he does have an incredible amount of experience scheming defenses. And I think he realized that with how banged up that line was, they really didn't need to blitz. And I mean, they were getting to Zach Collaros and making him make quick decisions or run around with only 4 and dropping the other 8 back into coverage. And that really did complicate things. And, we'll see whether Saskatchewan takes a page out of his book. To me, it's going to come back. It's going to come down to 2 things on Sunday. Can the Bomber offensive line hold up and give Zach Collaros enough time to throw the football? I will say the one thing they continued to do very well was run the football. And Braden Oliveira is at the top of his game right now. They're absolutely going to need to do that. But if you even look back at their game between Saskatchewan and Winnipeg last year, this was a game where it was very tight, a bunch of field goals. You can't turn the football over. And the Bombers did that in a couple of key situations, and that, in a lot of ways, ended up being the difference. Hopefully, Zach got those picks out on the weekend, and they can have a clean sheet against Saskatchewan, because that would go a long way to get a victory and to get back on top of the Western Division. The line is out for the game. We didn't have it yesterday. It is now out, and the Riders are just a 2.5-point favorite. So essentially, this is saying if this was on an even playing field, on a neutral field, the Bombers would be like a 0.5-point favorite. This is, in a lot of ways, a pick 'em. Although, make no mistake about it, home field advantage in the Labor Day Classic and the Banjo Bowl is very significant. We'll talk about this a little bit more later on today when we get to our cool bet lines. Connor, Jamie Thomas is coming up in just a couple minutes from the Jets, and we're going to dive into him on the Braden Yager trade. And you were all over that on the weekend. Obviously, did a great bit on that on the WST Week in Review, or Weekly. If you haven't checked that out, that is there. But and Chevy got it done again. Really, really intriguing trade, and one that certainly, I know you were in the chat, was very well received by Winnipeg Jet fans. You move on from the Rutger McGroarty era, but in many eyes of some, certainly getting a prospect of equal value, one that might even have a higher ceiling long term in the National Hockey League. What did you think? And now that you've had a few days to process it all, what do you make of the end of the Rutger era here in the Peg?
Yeah, I mean, this whole time and all the reports that we were hearing and the perceived value of Rutger McGroarty, it felt like they were destined to lose this trade. And it's not like they won it per se, but they drew even, or at least a lot of fans think that. They got the 14th overall pick and just the year later draft from Saskatoon, local Western Canadian prairie hockey player prospect. I do think that they maybe drew even, but again, given the context, the public trade request from McGroarty and his agent and his camp, they were bound to lose this deal. Everyone kind of knew that they could wait the Jets out. They had to trade him. He wasn't going to sign there, and everyone was aware of that. So to draw even on a trade like that, again, you could say if they won or lost the trade either way. I think that they drew even, and I think that that's a win in itself if you're looking from a Winnipeg perspective. And Liz Hood and I have had the weekend to kind of dive into Braden Yager's game. We're going to be recording the 3rd episode of WST Deep Dive this week, hopefully for this weekend, maybe early next week, on Braden Yager's game, strengths, weaknesses, all that stuff, what to watch for. I'm super excited for everyone to hear that because, again, new prospect, you don't really know much about them. They come into the system and you just kind of pour into all this research. You learn a lot about the players. So I'm excited to record that and have it out hopefully over the weekend sometime, maybe Monday, given it's Labor Day weekend.
Another reason, gang, to hit the subscribe button here on the YouTube channel and make sure you're getting all of our content on the podcast as well. But that'll come up for a little long weekend viewing, the latest on Braden Yager. And actually, we're going to be talking about that with Jamie Thomas right away. One thing I will say is that Yager made a great first impression amongst WSTers with his visit on Friday. Very well spoken. And listen, you can... And I know people feel that they've been burned by Rutger because he came in and maybe more than any prospect we've ever seen, said all the right things and charmed everybody to the nth degree. But my takeaway certainly from talking to Braden was he was, sincerely looking forward to his opportunity with the Winnipeg Jets. I think the way the team is sort of built right now, he sees that there's going to be opportunity in the future to, be a player that can hopefully reach his potential in the National Hockey League. And I'll tell you what, I mean, I know it's somewhat of an intangible, and I don't know how much it matters when the puck drops and they're on the ice, but there is something to be said to moving on from an American prospect that maybe sort of thumbed his nose at the city organization for whatever reason. They wouldn't tell them, for a young man that comes in with such a good attitude, a level of excitement, and a lot of support from just a little west of us, of people that are excited to see him be a Winnipeg Jet.
And above all else, Huss, he's not a Rider fan. So I think that's
agent.
A win. That's a big win.
He's
yes,
a free agent.
That's a big win right there. yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the end part there with McGroarty not telling the Jets. If there's one thing that I haven't been able to wrap my head around the days after this trade, it's still that whole Kevin Cheveldayoff presser and what he said on how it just didn't feel right. That's what McGroarty's camp was telling Chevy, and then he never really got a real reason. And Chevy just kind of said, anyways, would have liked to have a good answer, but oh well. And then we had to trade him, so we went and got Braden Yager. And it's just like, whoa, what? That was it? So the Braden Yager acquisition and the trade itself, I've been able to wrap my head around. And the player I've done a lot of research into, but the whole Cheveldayoff press conference, I'm still trying to wrap my head around kind of the reasoning and how that came to be, but I don't think we'll ever find that out.
It's a Bush League move. It is a Bush League move to handle it the way that it handled, and it's right out of the Cutter Gauthier playbook. And he was criticized, and his people, his advisors, whatever you want to call it, because they don't technically have agents yet, were criticized roundly.
Right.
But the Winnipeg Jets move on. And I will say this, and we're going to get into this with Jamie right away and find out a little bit more about Yager from his conversation with the head coach of the WHL champion Moose Jaw Warriors. I mean, we had heard around the draft that the Jets maybe were thinking about trading him for one of the picks in this year's draft in and around that area. I would have been a little underwhelmed at that, because we kind of felt that Rutger was ready to make that step to being a pro and potentially the National Hockey League, and you're kicking it down a couple more years. To me, this is a way better situation. And I mean, it's a prospect that was picked at the same spot, but grew significantly through last year, won a championship, had a monster season. I think he's far further along, and probably you're a little bit more sure about him as opposed to, calling someone's name in the middle of round one. So listen, we're going to get to that with Jamie Thomas right now. Connor, hang tight. We'll look forward to bringing you back a little later on. Stay on top of what we're hearing from Bomber practice. If there's any more notes from Eddie and the boys down at Princess Auto Stadium. We going to have Jamie Thomas right now. As I mentioned earlier, CFL 110, myself and Jeff Hamilton's back tomorrow. And it, of course, is brought to you by Garage Living Winnipeg. Guys, the push is on. If you want to have a clean, organized garage this fall to max out your winter before the snow flies, give Garage Living a call at 999-1234. It's been a great summer for the guys at Garage Living, transforming dozens of garages in and around the city. Now they're fired up for a busy fall as the push is on to get clients booked, garages designed, and installations complete before winter. Don't miss your chance to clear the clutter, revolutionize your space, organize and beautify your garage with polyaspartic floor coating, made in Canada premium metal cabinetry, and slat wall storage solutions. Check out their website at garageliving.com. Amazing examples of all of their work. And give our friend Pat Canuga a call. He's loving his move from early morning radio guy to garage designer. You can hit Pat up at 204-999-1234 to book a free in-garage consultation, or make an appointment to meet him at their showroom at 981 Main Street. Garage Living Winnipeg. Garage is made for living, and we'll see you tomorrow on CFL 110. I got to thank the gang at Rolly's Transfer. And listen, Rolly's have been crazy busy all summer long, as summer's a very popular time for moving. But listen, they are 12 months a year, and they've been doing it family-owned and operated for over 60 years here in the province. Is the most trusted name in moving. Now, if you have a move coming up, get the white glove treatment from the experts at Rolly's and take advantage of a special deal for WST listeners. Pop by their beautiful new relaunched website at Rollys.com. In the top right corner, you'll see the request a quote feature. Click on that. Let them know when you're planning on moving, where you're planning on moving, and of course, what you need to move. You can even upload pictures of furniture, boxes as well. But when you do that, make sure you click on that promo code and put in WST And our friends at Rollies will have a special discount for Winnipeg Sports Talk listeners on both moving services and moving supplies. For your next move, get the white glove treatment from the most trusted name in moving, family owned and operated for over 60 years. It's Rollies Transfer. Find out more or request an estimate today online at rollies.com. A big cheers to our friends at Consolidated Supply. You know, the summer started, well, not too great. It was very, very wet, which was not good for all of us. But thankfully, Consolidated Supply, the experts in irrigation systems and solutions, were there, not just for the golf industry, where they've been a mainstay for many years, but also for local businesses and residences. They're the leaders in irrigation systems, but also artificial turf, golf carts, and other great options for your property, including hot tubs and amazing outdoor kitchens, not to mention the leaders in small engine parts and repair. Pop by and see them at their showroom, open to the public. Consolidated Supplies at 1395 Niagara Road East, or find out more online at cte.ca. And hey, we got one more long weekend coming up. I know many of you are going to be back out camping, back on the boat, hitting the ATV. And before we start worrying about getting our cars and trucks to start and make it through the winter, all the fun stuff is powered through the summer by Manitoba Battery, the number one spot for batteries in town, with literally batteries for everything. And not just batteries for everything, but batteries at the best price in town, beating the pants off the big box stores, period, to give you the best price, allowing you to shop local and with the best service as well. You can see them on Logan Avenue at their original location, their brand new spot at 452 Dovercourt Drive. But knowing your time is valuable and you're busy, just give them a call or order online at manitobabattery.com, and they'll deliver it to you for free anywhere inside the perimeter of the city of Winnipeg with any purchase of over $60. It's just that easy. For all your battery needs, shop local and get the best price in town at manitobabattery.com. All right. Spent a fun evening with this next individual, as well as a bunch of other friends, as we do one of our annual fantasy football drafts. Last night, he was the commissioner. Today, he joins us as our go-to guy at Jets TV and WinnipegJets.com, Jamie Thomas. JT, wonderful event last night. Always great to get the fellas together in person for a draft.
Yeah, that's why we made the big move at the What Would Taco Do League to become more local, us, because the draft has to have everybody located. I've done far too many drafts where a lot of the guys are doing it remotely. We had one owner yesterday that had COVID, so that made it kind of complicated. But 10 out of the 12 owners showed up. Another guy had to attend his kid's hockey tryout, so we'll forgive him on that one. But it was a lot of fun, and I always feel like there's more chirping going on when you have everybody side by side. It's just far easier, and then everybody gets to know one another, and a lot easier to deal with people you know. Deal with the devil you know, not the one you don't know.
No doubt about that. Hey, listen, right out of the gate, because I want to get to Braden Yager, and there's a piece up, but FanFest announced today. We are, and WSTers, certainly we were there. Hopefully we'll do that again. We had a real fun time broadcasting from FanFest last year. It's just such a great event, for fans to be able to get a little bit closer to the players. Always great deals from the folks from the pro shop setting up there with a lot of exclusive. That's where I got my Slamberg jersey last year. Not nice and early. But September 21st is going to be FanFest. Free tickets are available on August 28th. So what day is that? Tomorrow? So that is tomorrow.
Tomorrow,
so
Wednesday,
10 a.m.
Yeah, at 10 a.m.
Free tickets.
Yep.
Tickets for tickets available through Ticketmaster. And again, go to WinnipegJets.com. There's a link there with all the information. But what a great way to kick off training camp and another season every year than inviting Winnipeg Jet fans down to the Hockey for All Center to get a little bit closer to the team and get things going.
Yeah, FanFest running from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And this year is unique, my friend, because the Jets will be playing their first preseason game that night. So fans will be seeing the pregame skate at Hockey for All Center. I think it's a pretty good it's a great idea to do that and have everybody all excited about the first preseason game of the year, getting a look at some new faces, obviously, and some not so new faces. But I've always enjoyed the event. It's a great time for Sarah Lesky and myself, Mitchell Clinton, Paul Edmonds to kind of talk to everybody and talk to a lot of fans about their expectations about the upcoming season. So the 24-25 campaign will be kicking off as the Winnipeg Jets and Manitoba Moose have FanFest. Again, it's presented by Ticketmaster. Free tickets going on sale, winnipegjets.com/fanfest. That's at 10 a.m. tomorrow to grab, and you're only allowed 8 tickets per order. So get going quickly.
Yeah, snap them up before they're gone and take it in. I know Bailey will be there, and many of the folks in the chat. It was so much fun seeing so many of you last year when we did it, and we'll look forward to doing it again. And that will, for I would say the vast majority of fans, probably their first opportunity to see Braden Yager, who made such a great impression on WST listeners with his visit with us on Friday after being acquired Thursday by the Jets for Rutger McGroarty. You've been doing a little digging. Again, we're going to see Braden Yager make his debut in Penticton in mid-September at the Young Stars tournament. But tell us about your conversation with the head coach of the Moose Jaw Warriors for a little bit more about the young man that will be starting his career in the Winnipeg Jets organization at some point.
Yeah, I think, Mark O'Leary, I had spoken to the Warriors coach before Braden was drafted in 2023 by the Pittsburgh Penguins, and just learning a little bit about him. But of course, you always want to know how is a player growing after his draft year. There's so much going on that way. You're worried about how things are going to go. Are you going to play right? Are the scouts going to see you? Where are you going to get drafted? So there's all that stuff to be worried about. So now that you are in the National Hockey League as a drafted player, how do you grow from there? So Braden Yager last year, according to Mark O'Leary, took some big steps. Clearly, point-wise, he took a massive step. He had 17 more points than he did the previous campaign and 10 fewer games. And on top of that, he had 27 points in 20 Western Hockey League playoff games. So the Moose Jaw Warriors won the Western Hockey League championship and went to the Memorial Cup. He added 6 more points in 4 games at the Mem Cup as well. So there's a lot of that experience alone, Huss, as anybody would tell you, a long playoff drive and then go into a tournament as elite as the Memorial Cup can only help a player's development. And that was clearly the case with Braden Yager. But Mark had told me that he has always had a great shot, but he worked on his playmaking abilities. And on top of that, they added penalty killing to his responsibilities. And the Moose Jaw Warriors penalty kill, while not terrible, but it sat below that 80% line that you want to see it at. And they were 10th in the Western Hockey League during the regular season. They were 4th during the postseason. And it jumped all the way to, I think, just under 83%. So Braden Yager was a big part of that. And the fact that he wanted to take that on and, other members of the leadership group on the Moose Jaw Warriors says a lot about the kid. And, another reason why Jets fans should be excited to have him join this organization.
One of the things that, stood out to me in the conversation was, I think, a quiet level of confidence on the young man. And, you would imagine that you'd be feeling pretty good about, having a career year last year.
Yes.
But also, most importantly, doing what he and his teammates did in the playoffs. And I know a lot of people are sort of pegging him because, unfortunately, there's no option to go to the Manitoba Moose. If he was born 4 days earlier, that would be on the table. Yeah. He's a Jan 3 birthday. So it is the WHL or the National Hockey League. And I got the feeling, and again, you probably get this from a lot of top prospects, certainly young men that have had the success that Braden's had, that, he hears everyone say, okay, sort of, this is the plan. But it was pretty clear that he's going to be coming into training camp, his second NHL training camp, with a little more experience under his belt, feeling a lot better about where he kind of fits in the hierarchy of things and, with a job to do. And that is give the Winnipeg Jets a very difficult decision as to whether or not to return him to the Moose Jaw Warriors for another season.
Yeah, for sure. And I think, what we heard a lot of from the Jets' younger, prospects at development camp back in July, it was just like that second camp or even that third development camp gives you that much more experience and you're less nervous because, one, the system, and two, a lot more of the people that are part of the organization and of course, your fellow prospects. And for Braden Yager to go to Penguins camp last year and, oh my gosh, like hang around with somebody otherwise known as Sidney Crosby, one of the greatest players ever to play the game, and Evgeny Malkin. That can only help you and help a younger player understand what it takes to be a pro, day in and day out, to see what these elite players do to keep their play level at the level that they've carried over decades. So for Braden to come to Winnipeg next month or right away, a couple of weeks, already with that in his experience and on his resume will be a good thing for him. And the fact that he's so excited to join this organization is certainly another bonus. And then it immediately jumps into it with the Young Stars Classic in Penticton in mid-September. So we don't have to wait long to see Braden Yager. It's not an entire summer or anything like that. It's right away, and it's pretty exciting.
Hey, listen, normally, like last week was a crazy week for hockey. We had the offer sheets matched. We had a couple significant trades of young prospects, but what was the buzz around the office like when the news broke about the Rutger trade and everyone finding out more about what was coming back?
Yeah, I think, it was, you were wondering if this was going to stretch longer, right? Clearly when the Rutger McGroarty news came about, not wanting to be a part of the organization, however way you want to look at it, you were just wondering if that was going to carry into training camp, if that was going to be, to start things off in early September, and how would that hang over the organization? Well, we've seen, I think it's best for everyone that it happened as quick as it did, but of course there's a buzz here, and I think there was a buzz around the city. And talking to you last night at the draft about your show, like, you told me there's a little bit of a lull in mid-July to mid-August, and that was not the case when that trade broke. So it's the entire city. And I think we should look at this in a couple of ways. You can look at the fact that maybe Rutger McGroarty didn't want to be here, but now it's just like, I think we should move on. Now you have this extremely talented player in Braden Yager in return, and we should all be excited, as a member of this organization, certainly as Jets fans and people that cover this team. You have somebody that's a Prairie kid that understands the fan base and what this place is all about. Braden Yager plays in Moose Jaw. That's another misunderstood place too in the Western Hockey League hierarchy. Mark O'Leary talked about that with me yesterday or the other day as well, about lots of guys don't want to come there, but then there's the Braden Points, there's Morgan Rileys. There's some pretty good players that have worn a Moose Jaw Warrior jersey, and now, of course, Braden Yager as well. And they understand, it's a smaller market, but the fans are passionate. You saw that every time the Warriors won a series. When they would come back, how excited the fans would be. They'd be there early in the morning, welcome the team back to the city. So this is a great time for everybody involved. But yes, to answer your question, buddy, there's a buzz here, there's some excitement, and it's just nice to have somebody that wants to be a member of the Winnipeg Jets organization.
Not to stoke the fires anymore, but I can't stop thinking about October 20th when the Pittsburgh Penguins come here in Game 5 of the season. And assuming that Mr. McGroarty is on the roster and playing in that game, I think it is going to be an atmosphere that is going to exceed PLD's return and even Evander Kane's return. And I mean, the two games this season that if you want to see a fired up crowd that probably is spitting venom, it will be Winnipeg Sunday afternoon, October 20th against Pittsburgh. And whenever the Anaheim Ducks and his buddy Cutter Gauthier come back to Philly, and I think both of those, it will be less than a warm welcome, I would suggest. Certainly Pittsburgh, despite the fact that Canadian hockey legend Sidney Crosby is going to be coming, and it will be fun. Hey, very quickly, I mean, we're getting into September next week. Training camp just around the corner. What do you and the gang have coming for fans as we sort of ramp up for the players to arrive in the city?
Yeah, I think we slowly wait for the guys to trickle in, right? And slowly, just that piece I put up on Winnipeg or NHL.com/Jets about Braden Yager and Mark O'Leary, the head coach of the Moose Jaw Warriors. I think you just wait for guys to slowly trickle in and see what the latest thing is. Hopefully we have some news with regards to Cole Perfetti sooner rather than later. But man, this is such an exciting time. When the season ends, and I know you probably feel the same way about this, buddy, you're relieved. It's a lot of work that goes into it, but the summer's been too long, and we're all ready to get back into it. So just stay with us on WinnipegJets.com and all the social channels. Cameron Penny and company on our social channels as well do such a great job of entertaining you. And Connor Hrabchak's got a new goal mask. We'll be talking to the artists of that right away. I believe that's going to go on Friday. It's goalie week. We celebrate that as well. I don't know if you were ever a goaltender, Huss, but I only did it in street hockey, and it's the hardest position going. So that's what we got going on here this week going forward.
Yeah, mixed in the net a little bit in Mighty Mites and like in between 6
who
and
hasn't?
8. But after
Everyone's
that,
put on the
yeah,
pads.
exactly. Then I kind of realized, no, we're going to stay out of the net. Hey, Jamie, great stuff. A lot of fun seeing
Thanks,
you
buddy.
and the fellas. Good luck to you. Not too much luck in the league, and hopefully your Dolphins have finally thawed out from Arrowhead in January and are ready to make it happen.
You just had. I'm hanging. You're breaking up. I can't hear you. I can't.
Take it easy, pal. We'll do this again soon. And you can get into a little fantasy football as well. There's Jamie Thomas of Jets.com. And yes, that piece with his conversation on Braden Yager with the head coach of the Moose Jaw Warriors is up at the Jets website right now. And again, don't forget, FanFest, September 21st. Go to the website for the link, but tickets are free. They'll be distributed tomorrow via the link at 10 a.m. All right, Mike McIntyre is coming up in just a couple of minutes. We'll keep on top of the Bombers. I was actually just noting that Bombing had a number of tweets coming out from what was the deal, and it does look like Drew Wolodarski is potentially coming off the 6-game IL. He was out there, and Bomber practice ended today with a big happy birthday from the fellas for Zach Caleros, who turned 36 today. So a nice birthday present for Zach and for Bomber fans would be a win on Sunday at the Labor Day Classic. Of course, all of our Bomber reports are brought to you by Princess Auto, proud sponsors of the Blue and Gold, and WST, headquartered and founded right here in Winnipeg, with the best deals on the most unique assortment of tools and equipment around. Everything you need to complete the projects on your list or start something new is at Princess Auto. Pop by and see them on Panet Road or Portage Avenue West. And you can always shop online 24/7, 365 at princessauto.com. I think Bomber fans may have drank Princess Auto Stadium out of Canadian Club last Friday night, which frankly is not surprising. And I do know we'll be bringing some CC with us on the 1930 Crew Tour to Regina on the weekend. Something else I think we'll be packing is Canadian Club and Ginger Ale Premixed Cocktail in cans. One of the best drinks of the summer, which is, of course, available at Princess Auto Stadium. Well, as long as, in addition to Canadian Club, throughout the venue, but it's also available at your local beer vendor. So the next time you're popping in for a rack, check out Canadian Club and Ginger Ale. Give that a try as well. And, of course, Canadian Club and CC and Ginger, all of the Canadian Club family available, waiting for you on your next trip to your local Manitoba liquor marts. Long weekends are for fun. They're going to football games. They're for getting out to the lake, not for spending it all doing a new fence. If you have a new fence, let the experts do it. Wallace & Wallace, the leaders in fencing and overhead doors, for over 70 years here in town, doing it since 1946. If you need the security and protection of a new fence, or if winter did a number on your old one, give them a call. They've got you covered with chain link, welded wire, wood fences, and more. And of course, if you do need a new garage door, they've also got Winnipeg's largest selection of overhead garage doors. Best bet is to give them a call at 204-452-2700. The Wallace & Wallace team will arrange a time to come out and give you a free estimate. You can also visit them at wallacefences.com or pop down to their showroom on Lawson Crescent off of Kenniston. And hey, by the way, I know it's cooled down a little bit. It's feeling a little more like fall today. We got the Labor Day game on the weekend. We were just talking about Jet training camp. We know what's coming around the corner. Guys, if with the change of the seasons coming, you need to up your menswear game, get on down to F Apparel at 190 Smith Street. The boys will take care of you there. Custom suits beginning at $400, along with chinos, golf pants, custom shirts, both tucked and untucked styles, and an incredible selection of menswear accessories. If you are getting married or in a wedding party coming up, make sure to talk to them as well about a 15% discount when the fellas get the suits for the big day at F Apparel. F's at 190 Smith Street. You can find out more online or make an appointment at that's EPHapparel.com. All right, Mike McIntyre coming up in about 10 minutes. I was mentioning yesterday a great charity boxing event coming to Winnipeg, and our friends, the Beer Can. What a venue for some outdoor boxing on Saturday, 2 p.m. Great way to pregame for the Labor Day Classic. Let's find out more about the charities that the event's supporting and what to come on Sunday with Harry Black of PanAm Boxing. All right, gang. If you're in town on Labor Day weekend and not in Regina, Sunday's going to be a great day. We got a massive football game at 6 p.m., but in the afternoon, starting at 2, our friends at the Beer Can and the PanAm Boxing Club have a heck of an event that I hope you'll check out, and it is for a great cause. It is the Beer Can Brawl, boxing at the Beer Can, put on by the PanAm Boxing Club in support of some very important charities, and it is a pleasure to welcome in the president of the PanAm Boxing Club, Harry Black, to Winnipeg Sports Talk for the first time. Harry, it's a pleasure to have you on the program. How are you?
Thank you. It's about time you got me on this program. I'm good. Thanks.
I was about to say, well, it's good we got you back from Kelowna, back to the motherland here, and we got a big event coming up. We were just chatting before we went on about, boxing overall, the ebbs and flows of it as a business, or as a sport, I guess. But it truly is one of the oldest sports in the world, one of the best ones to watch live. And I can't think of a better way to spend a Sunday afternoon on the Labor Day long weekend in Winnipeg than in a beautiful venue outdoors like the Beer Can, watching some really talented young fighters. Fill us in on the event overall, how the idea came, and then we'll get into what it's supporting.
Sure. Okay. Unique. It's outdoors. And the weather is predicted to be a great day, not too hot, but sun, lots of sun and fresh air. You and I, we love boxing, so we can't think of a better thing to do than be there, but it will be a pretty interesting afternoon. It's a couple hours of fighting. We've got 8 fights teed up, and 2 of which are women. And one of those female fights is going to have one of our fighters who's on the national team. She'll be competing, so that'll be a pretty highly skilled event. As I said, though, 8 fighters of all levels of competency, mostly experienced senior open fighters. We start at 2 p.m. We'll go, like I said, till about 5. These are all non-professional fighters. It just means they don't get paid, but they're all very competent in the sport. So I think a really unique day and a nice warm-up for the Bomber game, I think.
Well, no doubt about it. And listen, I think all summer long, many of our listeners have been popping down to the Beer Can. It's perfect. It's central. It is such a beautiful venue. Yeah. And, they've done a lot of unique programming over the years, but this is one that I'm not sure that they've done before. So it's 2:00, and we'll throw the link in for tickets. So if you go to the Beer Can socials, there'll be a link there, or you can just Google boxing at the Beer Can. There's an Eventbrite link. The tickets are $25. Of course, they'll have the amazing food from the Cosmos guys there, the best in local beers, some other great drinks, and boxing. And I remember, over the last few decades, going to some amazing boxing events here in Winnipeg. We don't see as many of those as maybe we did in the past, which makes it a really great opportunity to not only check out an amazing venue for a very unique event, but get to see live boxing, which frankly just isn't around as much as it had been in the past, Harry.
Yeah, that's true. I can speak to that quite a bit because we used to promote professional fight cards in Winnipeg. We put on, I don't know if you'll remember this, but we put on Lalonde. He fought Virgil Hill at the ballpark. We're going back about half a dozen years now. So that was our last and biggest event that was televised, ESPN. Prior to that, there were convention center fights. There were a couple promoters in town that have since left Winnipeg. So yeah, boxing isn't happening anywhere near the level it used to, especially at the professional level. Amateur, it's occurring, but very sort of small local cards at each of the club's venues, possibly. PanAm often does a card every couple months, but this is a special one. The outdoor aspect is really a great venue to participate in too. As a fighter, I fought outdoors, and you can't beat it. It's really memorable. It'll be I think, quite a unique event. And as you've alluded to, the football games on afterwards. Probably could stay at the beer can. I know they'll have programming on for the rest of the evening.
Well, as they say, it'll be a nice little warm up for everyone to see some great fights, and then wherever they end up for the football game, lock in for the Bombers and Riders. You're the president of PanAm Boxing Club. That PanAm is synonymous with fighting in our city for a long time. Just give it for people that have maybe heard about it. Give us a little bit of the history of PanAm, because it is in a lot of ways the roots of the fight game here in the Peg.
Yeah, we think so. Yeah, I'd love to tell you about PanAm. So PanAm, the name, actually came from the PanAm Games, not of 1999, but back in 1967, the PanAm Games were hosted in Winnipeg. And from there, the equipment actually came from the PanAm Games and were donated to two coaches that started PanAm Boxing Club in 1968. So it's been around for 55 years. Lots of really well-known fighters came out of the club that turned professional. We've been operating as a non-profit since then. I fought for PanAm, and then when I came back to Winnipeg after being away for 5 years, took over the running of the club with my coach, who was still around. And it's been operating ever since. We're down located in the Exchange in a historic building. We've got 2 floors of boxing and a third gym actually next door in another organization that we run called PanAm Place. And PanAm Place, if I could segue to that, which is part of why we're trying to raise funds through this outdoor event, is a home for men that would otherwise be homeless. So we've got 20 men that live there. We feed them, we house them, and we train them. As a requirement, they have to go over to PanAm at least 3 times a week and train. And that's because of the positive impact that boxing can have on one's sort of mental and physical health. So we've really joined the 2 entities together. They operate almost as one in terms of how we look after our men over there. And so between the two entities, I think we really contribute to the community in terms of a great place for fighters, a great place for people that love the sport but want to get fit. And it's a great place for our PanAm Place residents to come over, stay grounded, get structured, have some discipline, and mix with the community that they wouldn't otherwise mix with as homeless people often can't. They get really ostracized just through how life seems to be, but through PanAm Place, we're able to really integrate them over with a day-to-day life of an average person.
It's such a great program, and learning more about this before you came on. I mean, listen, we're all Winnipeggers. I mean, we live in the city. I mean, we see the challenges right now, and we see many people struggling with homelessness, and to have an iconic gym there, obviously serving the boxing community, but to be able to also do everything you can to help homelessness, as well as a unique program to help legitimately change maybe the path of some of the men that go to PanAm Place. Frankly, we need more of that. And this event, folks, just so you know, every dollar is for charity for PanAm Boxing Club and PanAm Place. And Harry, I mean, I'm sure you can speak to the challenges, of being able to, provide. The need is always there. I mean, there's always more of a need, and it's really commendable to be able to give a really cool venue for boxers in the province to show what they can do, and then at the same time, hopefully make a difference on the streets. This is the reason why I think the Beer Can was so keen to have this on, considering what they do in the community, and obviously we wanted to do everything we could to get the word out on this real event. Just for you, like as the president of it. I mean, I know boxing has been your life for a long time, but how impactful has that PanAm Place program been on you and really what you're doing with the boxing side of things, knowing the effect you're having in the community with PanAm Place?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. Not often asked that question, the impact on myself, but Yeah, it's been pretty profound. It's something I live to do now. Boxing, it's been in my life for 50 years, and I can honestly say full time. I still train like a fighter. I think like a fighter, and there's a certain way about our Pan Am fighters that is about being very sort of humble about what we do, which has led us to run a place like PanAm Place. And for me to be involved and help contribute to the success of both entities really matters to me. And I'm very grateful for all the volunteers, because both organizations are run by volunteers with the exception of about 4 or 5 employees. So we've got 50, 60 volunteers that honestly run both organizations in a great, down-to-earth, practical, beneficial way for all of us. We all get ahead by volunteering and helping. We feel really good about it, and helps us feel fulfilled. And likewise, the people that come to the club feel the same way. They walk away with a piece of Pan Am or a piece of PanAm Place. So really proud, I guess, would be one way to put it. And grateful for all the people that have contributed without pay, countless hours, including the Beer Can. Just them opening up their venue to us to be able to do this. They're taking a risk, and so we're very appreciative of that opportunity. And people like you, Andrew, who open up your venue here for us to speak to the public.
Well, listen, I mean, it's bottom line. I mean, it's a great sporting event. I mean, we are a sports show. This is a unique event at an incredible venue, so we wanted to get the word out. But at the same time, when you know where the money's going, I think it makes it that much more important to support. Gang, if you're listening on the podcast, just go to Google and put in Boxing at the Beer Can. The Eventbrite link will come right up. We'll throw it in the chat as well. If you are able to, grab some tickets, go down, see some great boxing, have some great refreshments and food down at the Beer Can on Sunday afternoon, 2 p.m., all for a great cause, supporting PanAm Place and the PanAm Boxing Club. And $25 a ticket. If you haven't checked out the Beer Can, it is a perfect combination of first time to go down and see some great programming and boxing, and obviously the great venue. And at the end of the day, every dollar from this event going to a very, very important cause. Harry Black, thank you very much. All the best. I am very regretful that I will be in Regina and not be able to be there myself, but I hope this one goes well, and we'll definitely be there, help you out, and be at the next one as things continue. But good luck to all the fighters, and all the best on Sunday, 2 p.m. for Boxing at the Beer Can for a great cause. All the best to you and everyone at the PanAm Boxing Club and at PanAm Place.
Yeah, thank you so much, Andrew.
You train day in and day out, learning new techniques, approaching new concepts, and living out the thrill of achieving your goals. Building a craft beer is no different. While you spend your hours on the ice, we spend ours here, brewing our trademark beer. Again, and again. Here's to pushing the status quo and challenging ourselves to build something memorable. 1919 by Little Brown Jug.
All right. Well, thanks again to Harry for stopping by. And again, if you're with us on YouTube right now, the ticket link is pinned in the YouTube chat. Click on that again for a great charity, a great cause, the PanAm Place. And as I say, I can't think of a better venue to enjoy some afternoon boxing and getting a few in you before the kickoff at 6 p.m. Winnipeg time for the Labor Day Classic. Of course, the Beer Can is at 1 Granite Way, adjacent to the Granite Curling Club, just over the Osborne Bridge. If you're listening on the podcast and you want to jump on tickets, just Google Boxing at the Beer Can. It'll take you to the Eventbrite link. You'll have the best in local beers to choose from. You'll have amazing food from the Cosmos fellas, and probably the coolest venue you could possibly watch high-level boxing anywhere this weekend. I'll tell you that much. Of course, the shout out to the Cosmos guys who have the incredible food offerings there, along with next door in the heart of Wolseley at 116 Sherbrooke. Their big Wingy Wednesday goes again tomorrow night. And my personal favorite, Hoagie Boys, the biggest, baddest sandwiches in town at South Osborne, now open 7 days a week, 11:30 to 7 p.m. every single day. Hey, we just had Jamie Thomas on. We know training camp's just around the corner. Minor hockey starting even earlier than that. If you're getting ready for the upcoming season, you're not really ready until you hit Royal Sports, the #1 sports superstore and the hockey headquarters for Winnipeg for over 40 years. Everything you need to get ready to drop the puck on another season's waiting for you at Royal, with hockey players staffing the department to make sure that you and the hockey players in your family get what they need, fit properly, ready for a great season. Royal Sports, 750 Pembina Highway. Follow them on Instagram as well, at Royal Sports Winnipeg, for the latest merchandise drops and sale information. And hey, we got some pennant race baseball to watch through the rest of this week. And then NFL's back. And we're going Mondays. We're going Thursdays. And, of course, CFL in full swing. No better place to get together to watch the big game than your local Boston Pizza, ice-cold schooners, world-famous BP wings, gourmet pizzas, and more. Pop down to your local BP tonight and get your gang together. And, hey, if you can't make it out, you can always get the great taste of Boston Pizza by ordering online at bostonpizza.com. All right, Chris Meaney coming up. We'll get into a little bit of a look ahead to NFL season at the bottom of the hour. But right now, let's welcome in Mike McIntyre from the Winnipeg Free Press. Mike, great to have you back on the program. How was the rest of the weekend at Southwood? Holy smokes, were those guys going low?
Yeah, it was toasty, first of all, walking the course Saturday and Sunday along with a lot of spectators. I think I'm finally cooled off now 48 hours or so later. It was humid. And it was two very different golf courses. The first 2 days, the leader, Johnny Kiefer, 20 under par after 36 holes. And then the wind started blowing on Saturday. Kiefer only managed a 1 under that day. So kind of brought the rest of the field back to him. But in the end, it kind of turned into a 2-horse race. And, I've covered now the Open for almost a decade, covering it. And I was a caddy for it for many years. This was one of the more thrilling, talented, and crowded leaderboards. Like right down to the final few holes on Sunday, Huss. It was anybody's tournament. And it was just tremendous theater. And it really did come down to the last hole, the last shot, and Neil Shipley, who there's a name. If you didn't know his name before this past weekend, you're going to get to know his name really well in the golf world. He's the guy that won the Low-Am at the Masters, won the Low-Am at the U.S. Open, played with Tiger on Sunday at Augusta, turned pro at the end of June, got 5 sponsors exemptions into PGA events, and earned $300,000. But here he is out here playing at Southwood because he doesn't have full status yet. This is probably the one and only time we're going to see him out on this tour, but it was a lot of fun to watch him. One errant tee shot at 18 into the fescue, Huss. He was absolutely buried. He made an incredible shot just to have a chance for par. He missed the putt, and Johnny Kiefer, a guy who had been the runner-up 4 times already on this tour. There's another name you're going to see a lot of. So he's now got 4 seconds and a first. He's making it look pretty easy. It was just a great event. I love everything about Manitoba Open Week. Great job by the volunteers, and the course was in great shape. And yeah, it was just a lot of fun.
After we had spoke last week, and you were at there, I mean, obviously we were focusing on the big trade that the Jets had made. I pulled up the leaderboard, and I'm like, wait a second, Neil Shipley. That's that was the guy from the Masters in the U.S. Open. And I'll be honest, I was stunned because I had seen him. I think I actually bet him to win the John Deere a few weeks ago because he was playing so well. I did not expect to see him here, but it just speaks to the talent on this tour and, how difficult it is for guys to, make that move to the PGA Tour. Safe to say, though, that with the points that he's received, what he's doing right now, not for long for Neil Shipley to be there each and every day. Quickly, Dylan Samrick had a nice run. He has now set the bar for Winnipeg Jets in the Manitoba Open, and Braxton Kuntz played his ass off as well.
Yeah, I mean, Dylan Sandberg got a very, very tidy 2 over 74 on Thursday, which obliterated the Jets scoring record. He can proudly wear the green jacket around the Jets dressing room. Mark Scheifele had the clubhouse lead at 78. Morgan Barron was second at 80. And so for Dylan Sandberg to carve out a 70-80, we went a little higher on day 2, but still a tremendous showing by him. Watching Dylan Sandberg golf, Huss, is a little like watching Dylan Sandberg play hockey. Nothing flashy, but just really steady, quietly efficient. And I guess that's kind of his MO. And yeah, Braxton Kuntz, 5 under 67 on day 2. Unfortunately, one bad hole. He had a triple bogey 8 late in his first round. Those 3 shots ended up costing him. That was the difference between him and the cut line. If he had just parred that hole instead of a triple. But a nice showing by Braxton, who yesterday flew back to Indiana. He's in his final year of college at Ball State, and he'll be turning pro next spring. So he'll be trying to obviously, tee it up and see if he can get on this tour, perhaps as early as next summer. But yeah, a lot of great golf. And just one more thing on Shipley. I had a great chat with him on Saturday. Not only is he a great golfer, he's a big personality. Kids love this guy. Like, he doesn't really look like the typical golfer. You see all these like string beans out on tour. He's got the broad shoulders, the big long hair. He went to the Bomber game. He went to the Bomber game on Friday night. His caddy's actually from Hamilton. He's one of the guys, he's got his own caddy. He doesn't just get a local to caddy. He's got his caddy that travels with him. His caddy's from Hamilton. Neil Shipley's from Pittsburgh. And so his caddy, of course, was rooting for the Tiger Cats. And Neil Shipley, couple things. He loved the stadium. Actually said it kind of reminded him of a bit smaller version of what the Steelers play out of in Pittsburgh. He loved the CFL. He could not stop talking about the CFL. That was his first experience. He was kind of in awe of the talent level. He said he couldn't believe that the linebackers were so skinny compared to what he sees down south. So he said a lot of people were coming up to him at the Bomber game. He even threw a shout out to the Rum Hut, although he said that he did not imbibe in the Rum Hut. He is a professional athlete, of course, who is in the middle of a golf tournament. But he did marvel at the Rum Hut and some of the scenes around that particular gathering.
Well, I was about to say, I mean, he's still a very young man, and I think that anyone in that situation would be legitimately impressed as to the fun and the crowd that is gathering in and around that area. Yeah. It was absolutely bananas there. I mean, I've been talking about this all season long. I was sitting in the North End, and I mean, I came out from 141 at one point, in and around halftime. And I mean, the people, it was, I don't mind big crowds, but I need to have a little bit of room. I went quickly back to the seats or to other areas because it seemed like 3/4 of the stadium wanted to be hanging around in that same spot. But listen, Mike,
let's face it, Huss, the first half of that football game didn't exactly, like, the second half obviously picked up, got a lot more exciting, especially if you're cheering for the Bombers. First half left a lot to be, First half left a lot to be desired, though, and in fact, as you say, down to the final few minutes. So there might have been some folks almost drowning their sorrows in the Rum Hut, but it was a beautiful night. Obviously, weather, sold-out crowd. It is Manitoba's biggest social, right? That's what the Rum Hut has become.
Well, the thing was, I mean, honestly, going out at halftime, the Bombers were up 16-3. The defense was dominating again. It was sort of like, all right, let's have a good time, and then quickly, people got back to the seats. Hamilton scores a touchdown and then just kept on going from there. And, Mike, I'll get your thoughts on, I mean, listen, a really rough night for Zach Caleros, who owned it afterwards. Throwing 3 picks in a tight game, you're not going to win often. The defense did a great job at the end of the game in getting the football back. And then, after struggling all night long, they go the length of the football field and get a touchdown late in the game. I mean, Hammer wrote about it. That's a gritty victory and one they can lean on later on, in certain moments. But I mean, overall, and Zach would be the first one to say, we'll hear it from him this week. They're going to need to clean it up and be more efficient and take care of the football better if they want to beat Saskatchewan in Regina on Sunday.
Yeah, and I mean, Zach Collaros did what we got a Piper appearance here.
Piper.
Walk right across the screen, Piper. Just make yourself at home here. Zach Collaros did what a veteran winner often does, which is come up big in the clutch. They don't ask how, just how many, right? And so it wasn't the prettiest victory, but it obviously was a much needed one. And it's incredible, Huss, how the West has just been turned on its head. For all these years, the wild, wild West. This year, it's the mild, mild West. And any one of the 5 teams could absolutely lay claim right now to being, standing tall, being in first, getting a bye right to the West final. Like it's so up for grabs. And doesn't that make these next couple weeks just enormous, with obviously Winnipeg and Saskatchewan going back to back, and obviously Edmonton and Calgary? Like, how big now does that series become? And BC, of course, Vernon Adams looks like he's getting close. And what do they do when he's back? So it's a bit of a turtle derby in the West for sure. But the Bombers are, they're one of the fastest moving turtles right now, along with the Elks. And it's going to make for just an absolutely thrilling second half. A few weeks ago, it looked like the Bombers were going to be left in the dust by BC and Saskatchewan, and now they're right in the mix. So, yeah, I mean, obviously Zach Collaros, not his best night. Is some of that the play calling by Buck Pierce? Is some of that execution by Zach Collaros? Is that on the receivers? Maybe a little bit of everything. But obviously they came up with the big play at the big time. And I guess if there's one thing we've learned about Zach Collaros, never really count this guy out. He's obviously a proven winner. But certainly there are signs that have to be at least a little concerning in Bomberland with some of what we've seen from him this season.
Well, I mean, and just, as far as the West goes, I mean, this has been a constant topic really for the last 3 weeks. Like every time we're talking about a game not involving the Bombers, it seems to have kind of gone their way. I mean, BC's lost 5 in a row. The Riders haven't won in a month. They had that one tie, and now all of a sudden, and I mean, honestly, the thought of the Bombers being able to be in first place on the ride home from Regina was literally preposterous a few weeks ago.
Absolutely.
And yet here we are. But top to bottom of the division, and this is why it is going to be so fun moving forward. Every game is so important. I mean, we're on the back 9 of the season, and for all intents and purposes, starting, almost with a clean slate. Like the Bombers have been able to, due to their own wins as of late, winning 3 in a row, what's happened to Saskatchewan and what's happened to BC, anyone's division right now. And the Bombers, unlike what they did at the start of the year, finding a way to win even when they haven't been their best. I can't wait for Sunday. I mean, we're all going to be there. It's going to be listen, there's nothing more fun than that trip to Regina on Labor Day weekend. But the matchup, Mike, of these two teams is I can't remember the last time the teams were basically tied in the standings or within a half game or even a game of each other. It's sort of been a one or the other. And we always say you can throw the records out, which often is legit. We're basically throwing all the records out right now, and it's going to be an 8-game sprint to the end of the season, starting with the kickoff at Mosaic on the weekend.
Well, you're right about the atmosphere in Saskatchewan, and too bad Neil Shipley's teeing it up this weekend down in Brainerd. That's where the next PGA Tour America stop was. Otherwise, he might have wanted to divert a few hours west to Regina if he had a blast at last Friday's game. Taking in a Labor Day classic would have been high on the list as well for sporting events. I'm not going to be in Regina this week. I'm actually going to be down in Minneapolis this week, Huss. Won't be quite the same atmosphere, but it will be a lot of fun because the Blue Jays are making their once a year pilgrimage to the Twin Cities. And obviously things have not gone very well for Toronto, although they're pretty hot lately. But there's always a ton of Manitobans down at Target Field watching the Twins and the Jays. So I'm looking forward to that. So yeah, it should be a lot of fun. I'll be keeping an eye, even though I'll be down in Minneapolis, certainly be keeping an eye on how things go for the Bombers. And you're right about a sprint. Like, although can turtles sprint? I mean, it's, but the Bombers, like you said, 3 in a row. Elks are red hot. BC's stumbling, Saskatchewan's stumbling, and Calgary's just kind of treading water. But yeah, I mean, for any team right now, like they say the season really begins after Labor Day, and sometimes that's just a cliche. This year, though, it absolutely just begins, because it almost feels like everyone is starting now from the same position. The first 10 or 11 games here are kind of, not me. This is now to go on a run, and there's going to be a team or two that gets a home playoff game. There's probably going to be a team or two that don't even get to the playoffs here. So that makes for what should be just an outstanding couple final months of the season.
Well, we'll be all over it here for the next few days, and then up bright and early on Saturday, getting after it on the way to Regina for the big game on Sunday. And then we come back, and we got NFL season starting and training camp right around the corner. Again, Chris Meaney coming up at the bottom of the hour. But Mike, listen, we spoke last Thursday on trade day. Huge news with the Jets acquiring Braden Yager. Had a nice chat with Jamie Thomas, who spoke with the head coach of the Moose Jaw Warriors. But you and Ken rolled out a pretty extensive mailbag column from Winnipeg Jet fans in the Freep on the weekend. And, we've talked a lot about, the Rutger McGroarty situation, Cole Perfetti's contract. One thing that we haven't talked a lot about, because frankly, it's been pretty quiet for the last couple months, is Nikolai Ehlers' situation. And I found it interesting, and maybe you can expand on it, that, your thoughts as to where we were when the season ended on Nikolai's future as to right now, maybe perspective changing a little bit on what may come for Nikolai Ehlers as it comes to a contract potentially here in Winnipeg.
Well, I think there's been some great conversations happening this summer, Huss, between Nikolai Ehlers and Scott Arniel. We know Scott Arniel said some, very encouraging things publicly about Ehlers. And that's not just window dressing. I think Scott Arniel views Nikolai Ehlers as a very valuable asset, a very valuable weapon. And, obviously the proof will be in the pudding, as they say, and we'll see once the season starts, how Nikolai Ehlers is deployed and what he does with the opportunity. But I do expect he's going to be given ample opportunity here to really play a huge role in what the Jets are trying to accomplish this season. And if that's the case, yeah, I mean, I admittedly, I've softened my position on Ehlers' future with the Jets, whereas back, earlier this summer offseason, I probably would have said there's a better chance that he's gone. I've shifted the other way now. Obviously, until an extension is signed, that possibility that he's gone in the near future exists, because he doesn't have a contract beyond this coming season. Could we see, recent history repeat itself, a la Scheifele and Hellebuck, during training camp last year, and we see a similar type extension signed between the Jets and Nikolai Ehlers? I wouldn't totally rule that out. That's not to say I have any inside information that's where this is headed. I just think that, not that there were wounds between the Jets and Ehlers, but I think a little bit of time here, and certainly the coaching change, and just some perspective, I think, has maybe made everybody rethink where they're at in this situation. And I do think Nikolai Ehlers is a player that Jets value. Maybe it hasn't always looked that way in terms of some of his usage. But I think this is, it's a huge year regardless for Nikolai Ehlers. It's a contract year, right? And so that's often a very good thing for both player and team when a player has something to prove. And I think the Jets are going to do everything they can to give Nikolai Ehlers the chance to go out and have a really special season. And that potentially could pave the way for this relationship to go on longer than maybe we thought it would. Obviously the Jets have a lot of talented wingers. They've got some talented wingers coming up as well in the system. So we'll see how things shake out here.
Hey, Mike, speaking of those talented wingers, I mean, is there a correlation between the Perfetti negotiations and a deal and what Cole Perfetti's deal looks like as to their ability to make something happen with Nikolai Ehlers, keeping in mind that it is kicking in next season when obviously there's some other deals coming off the books?
Yeah, and I mean, if they're not signing Cole Perfetti to a long-term extension now, and it's just more of a bridge, they still have to account for what they think a Perfetti long-term extension might look like in a year or two down the road. So I don't know that they're intrinsically linked, that, they need something to happen specifically with Perfetti in order to do something with Nikolai Ehlers. I think there's a situation that both guys are signed to long-term extensions, and it works out for the team when it comes to the salary cap. But certainly, getting some finality on Cole Perfetti's situation, and I think Kenny answered the question in our mailbag this week. I'm with him. It's not a matter of if, but just when. Like, I don't think there's reason to be alarmed. That you look around the league, Huss, there's a lot of RFAs right now, like more prominent RFAs than Cole Perfetti. No offense to Cole Perfetti, that don't have deals. I think we'll see that really pick up probably next week. Not to say that Cole Perfetti signs an extension next week, but I do think Labor Day almost becomes a bit of an unofficial starting line, if you will, where GMs and agents and players kind of really start to rev up. I know there's a bunch of Jets that are coming into town early next week. They'll probably be starting to skate down at the Hockey for All Center. And so I think you'll see conversations pick up. And I'm not concerned that, Perfetti's not going to be signed when camp begins here in a few weeks. As for Nikolai Ehlers, I think that there are talks ongoing. That'll probably continue to happen. Are the Jets comfortable going into the season without him signed to an extension? I think they are. Obviously, that creates a degree of risk. And then we start to look at the trade deadline, and you and I have talked about that before. Like, if the Jets are in a playoff spot, I don't envision a scenario where you're moving one of your most dynamic forwards. So then does he become your own rental if you don't, but then that's not great asset management. Like, there's a lot of risk reward involved. But I wouldn't close the door on that scenario not being something that has to be worried about, because the two sides maybe do come to an agreement sooner than later.
Yeah, well, we'll have some time to kick that around over the next couple of weeks as the team gets closer to camp. And next week, we can kick around some playoff baseball. Fish with their win last night. Now a half game up and have clinched the playoffs. So we'll do that then. Have a fun time along with half of the province going to watch the Jays. They're always well represented down in the Twin Cities. And have a great time, Mike. And we'll look forward to catching up with you next week when we're back at it in September and back to real life for a lot of people. Holidays are done. Football season, CFL down the stretch, NFL coming, and of course, NHL training camps coming up. But we'll look forward to reading about it as well in the Free Press. Thanks for doing this.
You bet.
All right,
enjoy the weekend. Stay hydrated.
Yes, always. As I mentioned, the Fish got a big win last night, rallying to beat Gary. They have a half-game lead right now in the standings in the American Association. Half game on Sioux Falls, 1 game on Fargo, but they are booked for the playoffs. They're back at it tonight and Wednesday. Thursday is a day off, and then the final home series and series of the regular season goes Friday right through until Monday, and then playoff baseball next week. We'll stay on top of it, let you know. Goldeyes.com for tickets for this week's games, as well as getting ready for playoff baseball down at Shaw Park. We're going to bring in our pal Chris Meaney in just a second. We will get to the cool bet lines a little bit later on. But, we've talked a lot of CFL because we've got this huge game coming up for the Bombers and the Riders. Obviously, we're always talking Jets, but NFL is here right now. So let's bring in my pal Chris Meaney. You can listen to him on Sirius XM Fantasy. And of course, check out all of his great content at FTN Fantasy at FTN Bets. Meaney, what's going on? How was your summer?
What's going on, brother? Always appreciate you, Hustler. It was a good summer, man. I spent a lot of time on the links. I saw your boy Jeremy Gates a couple times.
Yes.
Went out there and golfed with him. We had a couple cold pops. Watching the baseball and creeping up to my favorite time ever to be a sports fan, right? I mean, have postseason baseball, NFL starting here next week, NHL training camps, right? Have opened up, and the association very. So it's all happening now. It's been a grind over the past couple of months preparing, our fantasy football draft kits and draft guides and projections and rankings. But we're set, and now we're ready for week 1 of the NFL season and NHL fantasy hockey kits live soon over at FTN Fantasy as we prepare for the hockey season too. So it's all happening. Appreciate you having me on, man. It's good to catch up.
Well, it's great to have you back. And by the way, speaking of our pal Jeremy, he was out there. He sent me some pics, and I guess some congratulations are in order. Put a ring on it. Engaged. Look at this.
Yes, that happened for sure. Not getting married for a couple of years, but in New York last year for Flex Leagues, fantasy football drafts. Appreciate the shout out on Sirius XM Fantasy. We're on there daily now, Monday to Friday from 1 to 3 Eastern. But I started off just going there to New York and doing a show and a segment here and there, and did put a ring on it. Been with the Deanna now for like 15 years, so it was a long time coming for sure. And it's good, man. It's all good. And Jeremy, of course, is pretty happy.
Well, listen, we're all happy, and we all know that you're even more motivated to bet some big NFL futures because you got to pay for a wedding. So let's get to it. Hey, from the man that gave us, what was the Ohtani number? Was it 50-1? The MVP number? Like one of the great futures. Like, I thought I had the best one with Mahomes, 40-1 to win the MVP after he'd played one game. But the 50-1 Ohtani topped it. He ended up being unanimous. And I know this is baseball, but it just speaks to the visualization, the research, what goes into the work that you do. Why don't we let's talk MVP right off the bat. I pull up the numbers over at CoolBet, and we've been all over all of these different futures. But to me, the MVP is always one of the most fun ones to kind of bet and follow throughout the year. And, we've seen Mahomes win it at 40-1, kind of coming on. It's been sort of the usual suspects the last few years. I mean, Lamar, Patrick Mahomes. When I look at this, the landscape of it, I mean, the odds, we got Mahomes at plus 550, Josh Allen at 6-1. CJ Stroud has emerged as a name that people like. He sort of had that monster season last year. People are expecting him at 9. Then you got Joe Burrow, Jordan Love, and Brock Purdy at 14, 15 for Hurts and Herbert and Dak Prescott. Lamar Jackson at 17-1. This is traditionally a quarterback award. I'll be honest, I'm pretty high on the Packers this year, and I do see some real value on Jordan Love, knowing that they don't really have any standout offensive players. They don't have a CeeDee Lamb. They don't have a Justin Jefferson. If the Packers do what a lot of people think they can do, it'll really, I think, revolve around Jordan Love. I think there's some possibility there. Are you expecting the usual suspects, or there's some guys like a Love or maybe lower on the board that you think are live heading into kickoff next year?
I'd love actually is the guy that I was going to talk up on this segment with you. From a fantasy football perspective, he's the guy that I have the most exposure to. In drafts, I don't like to reach on my quarterback, and I like to live in the middle round. So Jordan Love, I mean, it wasn't a rookie campaign for him. I mean, he was drafted a few years ago in the first round when Aaron Rodgers was there. But I mean, learning behind Rodgers and learning Matt LaFleur's system, and Matt LaFleur adjusting to Jordan Love's strengths, running a lot of guys in motion, which Rodgers didn't like. And you just have to be very impressed with how the season went for Jordan Love in his first full year in the NFL. He struggled to begin. Right, he was forcing some passes and there were some interceptions there, but in the second half, from week 11 on, he was the best quarterback in football. I mean, there was a stretch there where he played the Lions and the Chiefs back to back, beat both of those teams, threw for nearly 600 yards, had the best QBR performance ever against the Chiefs last season. I don't mean of all time, but you know that Chiefs defense was fantastic, which led them to the Super Bowl. I think a lot of people just assume Mahomes and Kelsey. I mean, it was the defense, as you're well aware of, that was so good last season that made them Super Bowl champs one more time. But Love had a phenomenal showing against that team, and he took care of the football. I think he had 21 touchdowns and 1 pick from week 11 on. And also, when you dive into how he grew, you look at the wide receiver and tight end room last year was the youngest in football. Consists of a few rookies and sophomores. Now Romeo Doubs, I think, heading into year 3. Christian Watson, year 3. Doubs maybe year 4. Wicks, year 2. Jaden Reed, year 2. And then the 2 rookie tight ends they had last year, Musgrave and Croft. So there's a lot to like in this wide receiver and tight end room. You just expect everyone to continue to grow. Love as a passer, beat up on the Cowboys in the first playoff game. Really, played awesome in the second playoff game too, and wasn't able to pull off a victory there. Mm-hmm. But he played great, and then you just feel like the room will grow again. Like the wide receivers, you're right, they don't have an alpha, but they have Jaden Reed, who reminds me of Deebo Samuel. You can move him around the formation, give him some carries. Christian Watson, who can blow the top off the defense should he stay healthy. Romeo Doubs led the team in air yard percentage, target percentage, end zone targets, touchdowns. He's a nice weapon inside the red zone. And Dontavian Wicks, who nobody really talks about, is probably the best route runner that they have. And Jordan Love said he's in for a monster season. If Wicks has a monster season, Love has a monster season. So that would be actually my pick for MVP. I do like CJ Stroud. I think the voters could be a little, you see Lamar Jackson and he has a pretty decent number, but he's a 2-time MVP. He won last year. They have Derrick Henry now to lean on in the run game. Nobody ran the football better than Baltimore. They probably lean on King Henry a little bit there. So Mahomes, at that number, you don't want to bet it, but I like the additions. The offense should be more explosive. Last year, they were missing the explosiveness, the deep threat guys, easy to bracket and double Kelsey. Now they have Hollywood and Xavier Worthy. The offense should be more than just screen passes, which was the case last year. But I like Love. Stroud is getting a lot of attention. You had Stephon Diggs there. What I will say about Stroud is, a tougher schedule this year. Houston won the division. The tape is out on CJ Stroud. So there could be some adjustments from defenses. And then they have that first place schedule. But Stroud is legit. He's awesome. I just love listening to him talk football. I think he was on a podcast with Micah Parsons, and they were just talking about all kinds of schemes, and they were just having some fun. And I was just in awe listening to CJ Stroud talk the game of football. But Jordan Love's he's legit. Last year wasn't a fluke, and there's something to be said about waiting behind guys and learning things on the sidelines, right? And the playbook. I mean, it worked out for Rodgers learning behind Brett Favre, and maybe it works out for Jordan Love. But I really like the Packers, the Eagles, and the Niners and the Lions get a lot of the headlines in the NFC, but the Packers offense is right there with the best of them inside the conference.
Yeah, listen, I mean, I'm in on Love at 14-1, and I'm in on the Packers at plus 190 to win that division. I mean, I think there's great value there. I mean, to be honest, when I look at them and Detroit, as good as Detroit was last year, I mean, I think it, if I was making the odds, maybe we'll give a slight edge to Detroit just because they won it last year. But to me, it's closer than the numbers that we're seeing right now. And just while we're talking about Green Bay, I mean, I was looking for receiving props, and I mean, Reed is 750. Christian Watson's is 750. And I would hit that in a second if you knew that he was going to play all the games. But I mean, Jordan Love's projected his season totals 3,900 yards. Someone's going to be catching those passes. And there's probably some value on a few of those Green Bay receivers as well when you're looking at season prop totals.
Yeah, there is, especially with Romeo Doubs. I think he's the guy that really is the one that's forgotten about inside this offense because has exploded at times, but I would really shy away from him because of what you just said. He's had a couple of hamstring for him. I mean, I heard rumblings of him learning how to run differently to try to prevent him from injuries, which is just something that I don't when I'm laying some money down. But Romeo Doubs is that guy. I think his touchdown props 4.5 plus money. He had 8 last year, and down the stretch into the playoffs. I think the playoffs are very telling. And one thing I forgot to mention about Green Bay, and I love the division pick by you at plus money, they also added Josh Jacobs, who I think is an upgrade over Aaron Jones. Aaron Jones was great down the stretch and into the playoffs, but this is a little bit older of a running back, and he's had some issues staying healthy, and I think Josh Jacobs is in the NFL in rushing yards. Right, you add him, he's not going to see a lot of stack boxes like he did in Las Vegas, so that helps him out. So I'll be looking at a Josh Jacobs, rushing touchdown prop. I think it was 6.5. I did see one out there. The backup running back already. I think today he's going to be placed on IR, so it's going to be a whole lot of Josh Jacobs early and near the red zone packages and things like that. But Romeo Doubs, again, like into the playoffs, all these other guys like Reed and Wicks and Watson, they had like a couple catches. Doubs was the guy. He had double-digit catches, and he had the yards. He had some catches in the end zone. He's the guy that Jordan Love tends to look at in the red zone. So they have touchdown prop on him. And then I would consider Jaden Reed. I do believe he is their best wide receiver. Like I said, they can use him in different ways. So he's a guy that probably won't leave the football field should they go in 3 wide receiver sets like that. So he'll be on the field, whether it's in the slot or some end arounds. So I'd consider something with him to receiving yards or a touchdown prop. But Romeo Doubs seems to be the forgotten one inside the Packers offense.
Chris Meaney is with us. We're getting ready for NFL season. I know you've all got your fantasy drafts this week. We've got no better brain to talk to than our current guest right now. Meaney, when it comes to fantasy, for folks that are doing their just regular redraft leagues, PPR, 12 teams, give me a player or two that you love, that you're maybe picking a little earlier to make sure that you get him. And I'm sure there's a player or two that you're fading because you don't like the situation that they're in going into the season.
Yeah, one of those running backs is actually Jahmyr Gibbs that I'm fading. I do like Detroit, right? You have to give them the benefit of the doubt to win the division, because one thing with Jared Goff is he struggles on the road, and just the way the schedule is kind of laid out for Detroit, he plays in a dome this season, so he has 3 games actually outdoors. So that does benefit Jared Goff, and they have a lot of weapons there. And I think they're the first team ever to have 2 rookies have double-digit touchdowns, and Jahmyr Gibbs and Sam Laporta. And you have Amon-Ra St. Brown there, who had 10 touchdowns and is just an alpha wide receiver. Should be like the 3rd, 4th wide receiver. But Jahmyr Gibbs, he's flashy. He does look better than backup running back Dave Montgomery, but this is a timeshare. It's a split between the two. Montgomery's the closer. Meaning when they are up in games, they lean on him. He is the guy that is getting more carries on the ground. He was inside the top 5 in red zone rushing attempts. So Jahmyr Gibbs is going as like RB4, RB5. He's going ahead of guys like Saquon Barkley and Jonathan Taylor, and those guys are not splitting their backfields. They're splitting their backfields with rushing quarterbacks, and Jalen Hurts and Anthony Richardson may get a couple rushing touchdowns here and there. But David Montgomery is cut into Jahmyr Gibbs' his workload. So he's an easy fade for me in the first round, early second round. I have no issues with any other running that early, like CMC, Breece Hall, or Bijan Robinson. I mentioned Saquon and Taylor as a really good target. So Gibbs is a guy that I'm fading, and I just like to draft wide receivers early and often. So in my first couple picks, I may even start with 3 wide receivers to start my draft, but certainly most likely going to 2 wide receivers, unless I was at the end of the first round and it was heavy wide receiver and Saquon and Taylor are there. I would use them as my hero or anchor RB and then continue to stack receivers, maybe get an elite tight end and wait in the middle rounds for my quarterbacks. But one running back that you can target if you wanted to start with wide receivers, Zamir White. I think there's value with Alvin Kamara and James Conner, Raheem Mostert. Nobody seems to want those running backs. But Zamir White is probably one of the bigger offseason winners. I mentioned Jacobs. Jacobs leaves Las Vegas, goes to Green Bay, and he missed 4 games last year. And Antonio Pierce, who took over from Josh McDaniels, really leaned on the run game when he took over in Las Vegas. And Zamir White, small sample, 4 games, but averaged 100 yards on the ground, 2.5 catches, and 20 opportunities. That's carries plus targets. So he was getting leaned on. He's getting drafted outside the top 25 at the running back position. You get him in the 7th round, 8th round. I have him as a top 20. It doesn't mean you need to draft him in the 5th round, but you could. I would consider him once you start to get to the 6th, especially if you have one of those hero RBs, a top tier running back, and you're hammered wide receivers. You're looking for somebody who could get all the touches. His pass catching upside may be limited. We have him for roughly 30, 35 grabs. It's roughly 2 a game, but he should get all the work on the ground. We have him inside the top 10 in terms of overall usage, touches and rushing attempts, and he should get a lot of the work in the red zone. And I think, having Gardner Minshew better at under center is a lot better than the way the Raiders started last year with Jimmy G. If anybody watched a receiver documentary, Devontae Adams not happy with Jimmy Garoppolo. Aiden O'Connell had a game where he completed a pass after the first quarter. That stuff just can't happen if you have Devontae Adams in your wide receiver room. So Gardner Minshew has been great before, filling in for Hurts, and he's feeding the football to Devontae Smith, AJ Brown. Last year, he fed the football to Michael Pittman, made him a top 15 wide receiver. He had some moments with the Jaguars when he was the starting quarterback as well. So I think it's a football. Zamir White, Alvin Kamara, Raheem Mostert. I'm really high on the Titans offense this year. Tony Pollard, Tajay Spears, probably a split backfield, but two guys that will return value, and they're not getting drafted as top 24 running backs, guys that you can fit in as flex plays. And I'll quickly throw out some wide receivers, and Jamison Williams, Ladd McConkey, Brian Thomas Jr., some high upside wide receivers in the middle parts of your draft. The Chargers, Keenan Allen and Gerald Everett and Austin Eckler and Mike Williams, all gone. Right, somebody has to catch passes in Los Angeles, and Ladd McConkey's got a starting role in the slot right away. And I think there's value with guys that have been disappointing over the past couple of years. McLaurin there, so certainly some value there at the wide receiver position. But I would suggest hammer wide receiver early, get a top 12 running back, and then revisit the running back position between rounds 6 and 8, and just some of the it's a passing league, Hustler. So make sure you get yourself a couple alpha wide receivers if you're just starting out in fantasy this year.
Hey, Meaney, before we go, who is on the Chris Meaney DND do not draft list?
Apart from maybe Devon Achane, I kind of feel the same way as I do with Gibbs. Gibbs is a better back. Achane had a sample size last year where he looked like LaDainian Tomlinson. He racked up like 600 total yards, like 6 touchdowns, and now everybody's freaking out, taking him as like RB7. But just like Montgomery, Mostert's not going anywhere. They extended him in the offseason. He's been linked to McDaniel's offense going back to San Fran. It was the first player he brought over. He's, again, the closer, the veteran inside this offense. So I'd be cautious of these like running backs that are in timeshares and committees that are getting drafted in the first round. Right, I'm fine with taking the unset veteran on the running on those teams, Raheem Mostert and Dave Montgomery. So the values, and other guys like I have nothing against Josh Allen and Jalen Hurts. I'm rocking the Birds hat. Like, it's nice to have those guys in your fantasy squad. They each had 15 rushes last year. It's going to drop down. You look at Josh Allen. I just don't want to take at the end of the second, early third. It's not needed. Take the running back depth of the wide receivers. Soak up some of the value in the middle rounds with Jordan, Kyler Murray, Jared Goff, Trevor Bounce. You're missing. Josh Allen is missing 80 targets from last year and roughly 2,000 total yards in Stephon Diggs and Gabe Davis. Right, and with Jalen Hurts, they have a new play caller in town with Kellen Moore. Right, last year's play calling was super vanilla. Now they got a guy like Saquon Barkley. Jason Kelsey is gone. I don't think you're going to see the tush brotherly shove as much. So maybe just avoid those top tier quarterbacks. I love Patrick Mahomes. Quarterback 3. Like, listen, this guy was quarterback 17 in fantasy points per game. Pass on those quarterbacks going in the first 2 to 3 rounds. Soak up some value at the wide receiver position. Get some depth. Get an elite tight end this year. Like, Ferguson's the last guy. Get yourself a top Kincaid, a McBride, a Mark Andrews, a Kyle Pitts, Evan Ingram, target hog, right? Get an elite. Don't play that tight end game, chasing around touchdowns from week to week. Get an elite tight end and maybe bypass some of those quarterbacks early on because I think they really hurt the of your squad and soak up some of that value in the middle rounds at quarterback.
Meaney, I cannot wait for my next draft. I can't wait for kickoff, raising a banner, Ravens and Chiefs next Thursday. It's going to be great. Congrats on the Sirius XM Fantasy. Fill people in on that. And of course, everything you've got cooking heading into September over at FTN.
Yeah, I'm a multi-sport guy like you. Mean Streets is a free show to check out. 3 days a week until football starts, and it'll be 5 days a week. We'll be talking football, like waivers on Monday, teeing up Monday Night Football. Weekly rankings come out on Wednesday. We'll be teeing up Thursday Night Football. We'll have prop bets on Friday and starter sit questions. You know that I'm a huge hockey fan, so training camp's ramping up here. Fantasy hockey talk and betting picks and futures. We'll have Dangle Bet Selly twice a week with my guy Eric Young. So covering all the sports free show at Mean Street, so you can watch on YouTube. You can listen on iTunes or Spotify. And then, SiriusXM on Monday to Friday from 1 to 3 Eastern, FTN Fantasy with myself and a rotation of Dane Martinez and Jake Seeley. But I'm hosting there every day, and it's been a fun ride, man. It started just doing a show last year on Saturday mornings, and baseball, getting people set up for the baseball season, and lucky enough that this has turned into 5 days a week. Fantasy Sports Radio Channel 87 from 1 to 3. We're taking everybody's calls, keeper league decisions, keeper league dilemmas, fantasy football strategy, and we'll be helping the people out all season long with picks and bets and starter sit questions. So really appreciate the time. It's awesome to catch up with you. Can the Chiefs make history? 3 Super Bowls in a row. Actually, really, really like the moves that they made in the offseason and grabbing some speed in Xavier Worthy and Hollywood Brown. So there's lots to like about Kansas City. Isaiah Pacheco is one of those hero RB, anchor RBs that you can take in the 3rd round and then ignore the position again until round 6. He's that good.
Well, I'm ready to go, Meaney. Continued success to you, and let's do this again once we get going a little bit later on. Always love having you on Winnipeg Sports Talk. All the best, pal. Thanks again for doing this.
Absolutely. Take care. Enjoy the rest of your show, dude.
There's a guy, Chris Meaney. Give him a follow on Twitter at Chris Meaney. And yes, check out the Mean Streets YouTube show. And if you do have Sirius XM and you're kicking around before WST, you can throw that on here. Meaney do his thing now 5 days a week. All right. Hey, let me give a shout out to our friends at Aikens Lake Wilderness Lodge, as they have a few more weeks left in what has been an absolutely glorious fishing season out at Aikens Lake. But they are already on to 2025. Check out aikenslake.com for more information on how you can book a dream fishing getaway, a fly-in trip where you can be on the water in less than 2 hours from the city of Winnipeg with hands down the best hospitality and service you'll find anywhere on the water. aikenslake.com as well at all of their social channels. And again, Aikens Lake. Talk to our pal Pitt Turan and get planning for that dream trip to Aikens coming up in 2025. A quick Breezy Bend golf report. We sort of did that with Mike, a little bit of a wrap-up of what was an amazing Manitoba Open. Kind of interesting hearing his stories about Neil Shipley enjoying that Bomber game on Friday night. Hey, listen, if you didn't have fun at that game, you better check your pulse. I'll tell you that much. But the Tour Championship gets going at East Lake in Atlanta. Only the top 30 golfers remaining on the PGA Tour. One Canadian, Taylor Pendrith, who, of course, is sponsored by CoolBet. We'll look forward to seeing Taylor do his thing and see what he can do. But, I mean, just huge to get into that top 30. All the majors next year, all the WGC events, all the elite events on the PGA Tour. He'll be in it, so congratulations to him. And again, a huge shout out to our friends at Breezy Bend. Again, I got back out there on the weekend. The course is absolutely perfect. All the work that they've done to transform the golf course in the last few years has all come together. If you're thinking about making a great long-term home for you and your family at one of Winnipeg's top private courses, give Breezy Bend a call. Ask for our pal Corey Johnson, or you can check them out online at breezybend.ca. All right, let's get Connor back in here. Connor, I love watching you behind the scenes of my conversations with Meaney, in and out. Are you a big Devon Shane guy? You've invested big in the Dolphins backfield, and you did not want to hear that from one of the best brains in the industry?
Yes, I did not want to hear that. In my home league, if you want to call it my main league, it's a keeper. So if you draft a player, you can keep them in the same round that you drafted them in for one more year. And last year I took Devon Achane in the 12th round. So he's like my stud keeper. Well, like obviously I'm going to keep him, yes, but like he's my guy, right? So he's like my stud keeper. I love him. Young rookie, electric player, one of the fastest players in the league. I'm so excited. But yeah, that was tough.
12th rounder. I mean, it's a no-brainer. I mean, you just want to have some other guys around him, may not be able to count. Now, do you have McCaffrey?
No, and I don't have the first pick. Although we are a 2 QB, I believe McCaffrey is kept this year though, so I have no chance at getting CMC.
It's too bad. We did. I said Commissioner Jamie Thomas popped in. We did our annual draft, and it's a similar 3 keepers, and if you keep a guy, you have to keep him 1 round higher than you picked him the year before.
Nice. Yeah.
So Drew Mindell actually had a couple of good running backs already and didn't have receivers. And he took Tyreek Hill first overall. I couldn't believe it. But again, he was sort of looking to see if someone wanted to trade for the pick, but figured that was where his need was and ended up getting Tyreek Hill. I'm still big in on Christian McCaffrey. And to be honest, beyond him, the guy that I'm really going to be targeting in some of the other drafts, even if it's just for the 1 year, if it is PPR especially, is Breece Hall with the Jets. You know, I just think the history of the Hackett offenses relies on play action, running the football, and that makes Aaron Rodgers that much more dangerous with the weapons that he has. Breece Hall was amazing last year with 8 in the box every single play because of how weak the quarterbacking was for the New York Jets. So let me ask you this just quickly before we get to these lines and stuff. AFC East. I mean, I think we can all agree that the Patriots are going to be 4th. Like, when you look ahead, you got Buffalo, Miami, and the Jets, and you can make an argument for any one of those 3 teams. Heading into the season, who do you see winning it, and how do you see that division shaking out?
I think it's between the Jets and the Dolphins. I agree with Chris there on the Bills. They lost a lot of their offense with Diggs. I'm a believer in James Cook, but still I feel like that offense is missing something, missing a perimeter threat. And they just lost Matt Milano as well to an injury, who's kind of like
devastating
the key
injury
to their defense. Yeah. And not enough people talk about that injury and how devastating that will be for the Bills. So I'm not entirely out on them as maybe a wildcard team if Josh Allen plays hero. But I do think that it's between the Jets and the Dolphins. And, you know, the Jets, I don't know if I like Rodgers staying healthy for a full season. I don't know, like, predicting them to win comes with a lot of risk. I love Breece Hall. I think their O-line is solid. I think their defense is one of the top 10, top 7 maybe in the NFL, really, really strong. So I could see them winning a lot of games, running the ball, playing good defense, and winning the division that way. But again, I have Devon Achane in fantasy. I'm lined up to take Tyreek Hill in the first round in fantasy as well. So if I sat here and didn't say that, yeah, I'm going to have Hill and Achane on my fantasy team. So if I sat here and said that I wasn't high on the Dolphins, I'd be lying to myself. So I think I'm going to pick the Dolphins to win that division.
Well, you know what? It's a nice little segue into the cool bet lines. We'll get to our ASD picks in just a minute. But, I mean, this is a great time, if you haven't already, to sort of dive into the futures. You're going to need a little bit because, I mean, they've got the conference winners, division, sacks, rushing, receiving, and passing props. What do we have? Scoring. Oh, this is nice. Team props for the highest scoring team. Your Niners are co-favorites with the Lions, just ahead of the Chiefs and the Philadelphia Eagles. And, of course, whether your team will make the playoffs or not, regular season wins, it is all there. But the latest on the AFC East, Buffalo is the favorite at plus 160.
Really?
Miami's plus 190. The Jets 2-1. I'm with you. I do think Buffalo takes a little bit of step back. Although, you know what? Josh Allen's going to have a real opportunity to prove that, you know, he is the catalyst for that entire team. I mean, Curtis Samuel's there, Khalil Shakir. I mean, some guys that you can get at pretty good value later on in drafts that are going to be seeing footballs. But there's a lot on Josh Allen's shoulders. And you mentioned that Milano injury. I think that's going to mean they're going to need to score a few more points each game if they're going to want to win. And I was just mentioning that Packer bet that I really like over at Cool Bet. The Lions are plus 130 for the North. Packers plus 190, Bears plus 315, and the Minnesota Vikings 11-1. I am on the Green Bay Packers. Tonight in the majors, a couple big games, and my Royals are having a great season. They've been so bad in recent history. I'm not sure people were ready for a turnaround this quickly, but I mean, Connor, this Bobby Witt, I mean, as you know, fans in KC particular, first they get Patrick Mahomes, and he turned into an all-time legend. And I'll tell you what, Bobby Witt is on the way to do that right now as well. They've got a huge game. They are one game back of the Cleveland Guardians. They could be in first place at the end of tonight. Royals are plus 130. They've got a real nice pitching matchup in this one. I'm all over Kansas City in this one, plus 130 on that. We've got some Blue Jays baseball a little bit later on after yesterday's Danny Jansen game, replayed for both teams in the same game. The Jays are plus 125. Red Sox minus 147. Cooper Criswell versus Yariel Rodriguez in that one. But if you go to, and I think this will be up there right now, you just go up to the sports. We did put together a little parlay for today. And I think it is. We'll see if it's up there yet. Maybe it's a little bit later on. Our lock shop one today. Bobby Witt over 1.5 bases. Bryce Harper over 1.5 bases in the Arizona D-backs money line. The guys will give us a nice boost on that. So pay attention to that over at the Cool Bet combo cards. And the other thing I just wanted to mention for the Tour Championship, those odds are up right now. And again, this is the staggered start. We'll dive into it tomorrow in the lock shop, but you can also bet winner without starting strokes. But Scotty Scheffler with his lead is just even money to win the tournament. That's not something you see very often, but he'll be there. Xander Schauffele second, Hideki right there, Ludwig Oberg and Rory McIlroy next on the board. And finally, we have a line for the Bombers Riders game on Sunday. Yesterday we had the other three. Now Winnipeg, Saskatchewan is on the board. And Saskatchewan is a 2.5-point favorite at home to the Bombers. Saskatchewan minus 143 to win. Bombers plus 118. And Connor, considering that books normally give 3 points for home field, and this is definitely a legit home field advantage this week, this is sort of right around where I thought it was going to be. 3, 2.5, because I think on a neutral field, it is very close to a pick-em between Winnipeg and Saskatchewan. And whoever executes better and takes care of the football on Sunday is going to win.
Absolutely. And you told me to keep my eyes on the news. Mike O'Shea did speak to the media. I saw Scott Billick and Darren Bombing and Derek Taylor all tweeted out, but Mike O'Shea said he expects Stanley Bryant to play on Sunday, which is great news.
Oh, that
not
is
only for
huge.
the Bombers, but for Stanley Bryant and how scary that injury was. We talked about it earlier. That is awesome. Gabe Wallace was on crutches. O'Shea said he didn't believe that was season ending, which is also good news given how that injury looked and the fact that he's on crutches. But obviously the biggest news, Stanley Bryant, he expects to play this Sunday, which is awesome.
All right. Well, I wanted to wait for the why not question of the day until we found out about Stanley Bryant. I can tell you I'm feeling a lot better about this game on Sunday now that 66 will hopefully be back. Why not question of the day for Not Autocorp at Waverly and McGillivray. How are you feeling about the Bombers? Never mind the point spread. We're talking about the win. Plus 118 on the money line. Will we be cashing those tickets? And will we be coming back on a very happy 1930 crew bus on Monday with the Winnipeg Blue Bombers in first place? Let me know in the chat. Shout out to our friends at Not Autocorp over at Waverly and McGillivray for that. Let's get to the horse picks. Actually came through, chipped away again at Remus's lead a little bit more. A nice little exactor in the final race. So this is the way things are looking for the card for tonight. We're going to start in race number 2. We've got a 1-5 exacta with House Limit and one of our favorites, Club Champ. Club Champ is the favorite. House Limit right in there. Open at 4-1. We'll start it off with that and hopefully get a win to get things going. In race number 3, we're just going to put a toonie on horse number 7, Prince of the Prairie. Had a tough time figuring out an exotic for that one, so just went with the straight win bet. Now, we've got a couple triactors that we put together. Race number 5, we are going with 5, 7, and 8, which I believe is both the program selections and the AI Smart Picks. So no barbed wire, Tree Hugger, and Lola Lee. A 5, 7, 8 triactor box. So essentially a $1 bet 6 ways. And then we did another triactor for race number 6. Numbers 1, 4, and 5. Exacting, Blazing Bow, and number 4, Galava. So 1, 4, and 5 for our race 6 triactor. And then for race 7, this is a big face. I've got a toonie to throw down. Let's go with a bit more of a long shot. Mr. K? Mr. K, what about Fast Traffic? Does Fast Traffic have a recent performance? We'll look at that. Two races ago at 1 at a mile. This is 7.5. We're going to go 2 on Fast Traffic, and hopefully Fast Traffic is fast enough to get the win tonight in race 7. Of course, live racing is tonight at 7:30, and again tomorrow night, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday at Assiniboia Downs. And normally they'd finish right after the Labor Day weekend. Not the case this year. Due to the postponed Wednesday shows earlier this year, we will get a few more races. So make plans to get down to the Downs. AssiniboiaDowns.com. You can give them a call, 885-3330 for reservations in the clubhouse dining room for that amazing prime rib buffet. Connor, what are the nights like now for you? I mean, we've got to wait for football until the weekend. NFL starting next week. Is it fantasy drafts each and every night like I have about most of the nights this week?
Yeah, I sit there on Underdog Fantasy every night and just draft a bunch of teams. No, I'm kidding. The Fish are in town this week. They had a home game last night. Joy Matulovic with a 10 strikeout performance. So they're in town and they're going to be at home until the playoffs. So this homestand is going to take them right into the playoffs through Labor Day weekend.
Are you working
I'm not
all
there
the
tonight,
games?
but I'm there Wednesday. I'm there Wednesday, and then I'm there Monday. So very sporadically, but this weekend heading out to Winnipeg Beach, as I always do on Labor Day weekend with my family. It's always a big thing. Winnipeg Beach, camping, Labor Day weekend. We all watch the Bomber game together. We've done this a few years in a row now, so I'm really looking forward to this weekend. But in the short term, the Gold Eyes are in town. I'll be there Wednesday and Monday working those games.
When you go out to Winnipeg Beach on the weekend with your fam camping, just let them know, plant that seed. You might need to move the weekend around because next year you might be getting called up to Regina.
Maybe.
I think you mean, listen, you are a very passionate Bomber fan. I've seen you at the home games. We've got to get you joining the crew for what is going to be so much fun this weekend. I cannot wait heading out Saturday morning. I think back to the tours that, Gary and I did like more than 10 years ago, and they were just so much fun. And now to be getting the gang back together and doing it and to have such a game, listen, the game's always awesome. The rivalry's great. Everyone's fun. I mean, you have so much, a great time to do it. But the fact that this is a game for first place in the West is not something I had on my bingo card 2 or 3 weeks ago. And yet that's where we're at. And you just said some great news about Stanley Bryant from head coach Mike O'Shea earlier this afternoon.
Yeah, and those buses you're going to be on are going to be a lot more, happy, a lot more positive vibes, given the fact the Bombers have won 3 straight and that these games mean something now. And like you said, you could be driving home first in the West. So this is going to be awesome. And yeah, the Stanley Bryant news, that is the best possible news we could have heard today on this Tuesday. So that is awesome. And it's even now more exciting for this game Sunday.
I was thinking about maybe getting a new jersey for the trip. I might have to get the 66. The Stanley Bryant.
It's not
It's
bad.
9 straight
Not
years.
bad.
Guy never misses a game. Iron Man of all. Connor, great stuff. We'll get back at it tomorrow with the latest on the Bombers, a look ahead to the Labor Day game and more. Ken's joining us tomorrow, and then Murat coming up on Thursday. Friday's going to be a big show heading into the Labor Day weekend. Eddie Tate, Scott Billick, and more. So make sure to join us then. Thanks again to all the sponsors that make this show happen each and every day. Thanks to Chris Meaney, Harry Black. Don't forget, link is in the description. Would love some of you guys to go out if you are in town this weekend and check out that boxing event in the Beer Can for a great cause. Be an amazing way to pregame before the Bomber game at 6 p.m. that night. Again, Google boxing at the Beer Can, and you'll get the link right away. Grab some tickets for that in support of the PanAm Place charity, which will be amazing. Of course, Jamie Thomas that joined us as well. Harry, Mike McIntyre, Chris Meaney, and of course, Connor Hrabchak. And a big thanks to Mitch Jansen doing a heck of a job getting us on and off the air. And, of course, getting that podcast up, which will be available right away. Folks, have a great night. We will see you tomorrow, 1 p.m. right here on YouTube on Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Have a good one.
Oh, my God. Oh! Shut it down. Let's go home.
Thanks for tuning in to Winnipeg Sports Talk Daily. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and your favorite podcast feed at winnipegsportstalk.com.